Beloved Australian author John Marsden, behind classics including Tomorrow When the War Began, has died at the age of 74. Author Alice Pung knew him for 2 decades. She even wrote a book about his influence on her writing, and she joins us now from Melbourne. Alice, thank you so much for joining us on what would be a pretty difficult time for you.
Thanks so much, Emma. Thank you for having me.
Can you explain what John Marsden and his writing has meant to you?
Oh, of course, Emma. So John's influence has been all throughout my life. When I was a teenager, my friends and I passed copies of his books around, and there were some teachers that were actively trying to get these books banned at school. But for us, and some of my friends came to Australia as unaccompanied minors on boats by themselves. My family survived the Cambodian genocide, had a lot of friends from Vietnam and Bosnia and other conflict zones. This was the first time we'd seen our lives reflected in literature. And I don't mean, young adult literature, I meant literature in general. He wrote about young adults as courageous and responsible and quite, intelligent and kind human beings. And teenagers usually aren't portrayed that way in literature because adults write about them from the perspective of being, middle-aged or however old they are. So he really shifted young adult literature in a very important way.
Yeah, and pretty incredible because he wrote all these stories as an adult. He wasn't, he wasn't a teenager sort of writing in that way. He was writing as an adult, but obviously really identified so strongly with teenagers and what it felt like and what you wanted to be looked at as.
Yeah, it's so true, Emma. John was a middle-aged man when he wrote his first book. And what really is striking about most of his books is the way he writes about female teenage protagonists. It is entirely convincing, and many of us who've read his books can completely identify with Ali from Tomorrow When the War Began series, no matter what class or culture or where we come from.
Alice, how did he inspire you? And tell us about your friendship with him. So obviously he inspired you with your writing, but became a bit of a mentor.
Oh, he did, Emma. And it was just exactly a week ago. Up till then, he'd sent me an email. So this comes as a huge shock for me. He became my friend because we saw each other around at writing events. And I got published when I was in my 20s, so I was a bit bewildered at these places. And John was just a lovely man who always seemed to look out for me. And I think it was also because he was quite shy himself. So when he stood in front of an audience of 2,000, he could give these speeches that were quite transformative because he spoke to the young adults in the room. But when he was with teachers or principals, he could barely look an adult in the eye sometimes because of the shyness. And he was a contradiction because he became a principal himself, and a really excellent one at that. Yeah.
Alice, thank you so much.
A generous person. Yeah, thank you.
He certainly sounds like it, and so important for so many young adults and older adults too. Alice, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and how much John meant to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.